The strike echoed throughout the house like dry thunder. Paloma Herrera fell to the kitchen floor, her lips split and her left eye instantly swollen. The tortillas she was making for dinner scattered across the talavera tiles while the comal continued to heat on the stove. "I told you I wanted meat, not this crap," shouted Rodrigo Mendoza, clenching his fists with a beer in his other hand. "What are you even good for if you can't even cook dinner properly?" It was Tuesday evening in the San Rafael neighborhood, Guadalajara, Jalisco. The neighbors were already accustomed to the shouts coming from house number 412 on Morelos Street. Senora Carmen, the neighbor on one side, would turn up the volume of her television every time the argument started. Don Ivan on the other side would go into his house and slam his windows shut. Paloma wiped the blood from her lip with the back of her hand. At 32 years old, she no longer remembered what it was like to smile without feeling pain. She had been married to Rodrigo for 8 years, and only for the first 2 years had he not laid a hand on her. "Forgive me, my love," she whispered, slowly getting up from the floor. "I'll make you scrambled eggs with chorizo, just the way you like them." Rodrigo looked at her with contempt. He was a 35-year-old, dark-skinned, stocky man who worked as a shift supervisor at a textile factory. To everyone else, he was the ideal husband, hardworking, responsible, always attending family gatherings, and bringing beer for street barbecues on Sundays. "It better be delicious," he grumbled, heading to the living room. "And don't take too long, I have to get up early tomorrow." Paloma began to gather the tortillas from the floor with trembling hands. The neighbors thought she was clumsy, always bumping into doors or tripping on the stairs. Rodrigo would explain his wife's bruises very convincingly. "She fell in the bathroom," he would say with a concerned face. "You know how absent-minded my Paloma is," and everyone believed him. How could anyone not believe Rodrigo Mendoza, a man who helped elderly women carry their groceries and always lent tools to his neighbors? While she was frying the chorizo, Paloma heard her husband talking on the phone with his compadre Javier. "Hola, compadre. How's the family?" Rodrigo said in a completely different voice, warm and friendly. "Yes, everything's fine. Paloma's making dinner. You know how caring she is?" Paloma closed her eyes. It was like living with two different people. The Rodrigo everyone knew. Charming, hardworking, the life of the party. The Rodrigo who lived in this house. He was a monster who would wake her with blows if dinner wasn't ready on time, pull her hair if she didn't iron his shirts well, humiliate her in front of her own relatives, and then apologize in private, only to attack her again a few hours later. The two-story house on Morelos Street looked quite ordinary from the outside. A red brick facade, windows with white grills, and a small garden where Paloma grew red geraniums. But inside, every corner held the echoes of her stifled screams. The master bedroom had witnessed him throwing her against the wall if she was slow to undress. The stairs knew the sound of her body rolling from the 5th step to the very first if he thought she took too long to bring him water. The bathroom mirror had a crack from the night he slammed her head against the glass because he didn't like her hairstyle. Paloma served the scrambled eggs with chorizo on Rodrigo's favorite plate, a blue one with yellow flowers, a gift from his mother. She slowly walked into the living room where he was watching a soccer match. "Here, my love," she said, placing the plate on the coffee table. Rodrigo tasted a piece and frowned. "Too salty. Let me try again." "No, too salty. Period." "You can't do anything right, woman!" He threw the plate on the floor. It shattered on the ceramic tile. Paloma immediately rushed to pick up the pieces, but he stopped her, grabbing her hair. "Leave it," he whispered in her ear. "You'll clean it up tomorrow. Now go. Make another dinner, and it better be perfect." He pushed her, and Paloma headed to the kitchen. Silent tears streamed down her cheeks. Outside, life in the San Rafael neighborhood continued as usual. Children played soccer, women chatted on benches, men returned from work hoping for a quiet dinner. But in house number 412, everything had a schedule. It began when Rodrigo returned from work and ended when he decided he had punished his wife enough for simply existing. That night, like all the previous 6 years, Paloma Herrera didn't go to bed until very late, wiping blood from her lip and promising herself that tomorrow everything would change. But tomorrow never changed, and Paloma didn't yet know that exactly 43 days later, She would make a decision that would change everything forever. 3 weeks later, after the broken plate incident, Paloma Herrera walked through the San Juan de Dios market in downtown Guadalajara, wearing dark glasses that hid the bruise under her eye, which had begun to fade 5 days ago. Her younger sister, Esperanza, was with her, buying vegetables for the week. Paloma, seriously, tell me about your eye, Esperanza asked, carrying a bag of tomatoes. And don't tell me you fell again, because I don't believe you anymore. Paloma pretended to examine poblano peppers to avoid her sister's gaze. I told you, Espe. I got up too fast and hit the cabinet door. Rodrigo scolded me for being clumsy. Did he scold you or hit you? Esperanza's question cut through the air like a knife. Paloma froze. No one had ever asked her so directly. Usually, there were hints, guesses, comments she could easily brush off. But this time, her younger sister, 26 years old, spoke directly, without beating around the bush. Don't be silly, Esperanza, Paloma mumbled, paying the pepper vendor. Rodrigo is a good man, hard-working, responsible. Paloma, I've known you since birth, Esperanza interrupted, taking her hand. You've changed. You don't smile like you used to. You're even afraid to speak loudly, and you always have new bruises. Do you think I'm stupid? At that moment, Paloma's phone rang. It was Rodrigo. Hello? Where are you? Her husband's voice was irritated. I came home and dinner isn't ready. Paloma looked at her watch. It was 2:30 p.m. I'm at the market with Esperanza, honey. I'll be home in half an hour. I'll make you lunch. Half an hour? Do you think you're important or something? You have 15 minutes to be home, or you'll find out what awaits you. The call ended. Paloma paled. Espy, I have to go. Rodrigo came home early. So what? Esperanza looked at her furiously. He'll hit you if you don't run back like a dog. Listen to yourself, Paloma. Listen to how you're speaking. Paloma quickly walked towards the market exit. You don't understand, Esperanza. You're not married. You don't know what it's like to be responsible. Responsible! Esperanza shouted, walking behind her. Paloma, please, this isn't responsibility. It's a prison. Paloma was already getting into a taxi. All the way to the San Rafael neighborhood, she remained silent, mentally choosing the words of apology she would say to Rodrigo. She knew exactly what phrases would calm him, how to lower her head to show her submission, how to prepare his favorite food in record time. She had perfected the art of being invisible. When she arrived home, Rodrigo was sitting in the living room with a grim face, watching television. Paloma silently entered through the back door and quickly began to take the vegetables out of the bags. Paloma, he shouted from the living room. Come here. She left everything in the kitchen and walked to the living room with her head down. Yes, my love. Sit down. He pointed to the single armchair. We need to talk. Paloma sat on the edge of the armchair, her hands on her knees. Rodrigo looked at her with that expression she knew all too well, the one that always preceded humiliation. Your sister Esperanza came here an hour ago, he said, leaning back on the sofa. She came to ask about your bruises. Paloma's mouth went dry. What? What did you tell her? I told her the truth, that you're very clumsy and always breaking something. But it seems she didn't quite believe me. Rodrigo smirked ominously. And what do you think, Paloma? Did you say something extra to her? No, Rodrigo, I swear I never— You're lying! He jumped up. Of course you did. That's why she came to interrogate me, as if I were a criminal. Paloma also stood up, backing away towards the wall. Truly, I didn't say anything, my love. Esperanza has always been too curious since childhood. Yes, curious. Rodrigo moved closer. But we'll see if she remains so after this. The first blow knocked her down. The second split her lip again. But this time, as he kicked her in the ribs, something else broke inside Paloma. It wasn't her body. It wasn't her bones. It was the last spark of hope that someone would ever be able to help her. Because even if her own sister came to confront Rodrigo, and he managed to convince her that everything was fine, then no one would ever believe her. She was completely alone. That night, while dressing her wounds in the bathroom, Paloma looked in the mirror and no longer recognized the woman looking back at her. It wasn't because of the bruises or the swelling. It was simply that there was nothing left in her eyes. No hope, no fear, no pain. Only a deep, dangerous emptiness. Rodrigo didn't know it yet, but he had just created something he had never seen before. Paloma Herrera, who had nothing to lose. It was Friday, October 13th, when the evening that would change everything forever arrived. Paloma had spent the day cleaning the entire house from top to bottom, preparing Rodrigo's favorite dinner, meat in its own juice with country-style beans, and hanging his shirts by color just as he liked. Rodrigo arrived at 8 p.m., more drunk than usual. He had been drinking at a cantina in downtown Guadalajara with his colleagues, celebrating their boss's birthday. Paloma heard him arrive. The garage gate rattled open, the car door slammed shut, his unsteady steps on the entrance. "Paloma!" he shouted from the doorway. "Come help me with my shoes!" She immediately ran. Rodrigo leaned against the wall in the hallway with clouded eyes. He smelled of tequila and beer. His white shirt was stained with sauce and had a lipstick mark on the collar, which Paloma pretended not to notice. "Take off my shoes," he ordered, heavily sitting in the living room armchair. Paloma knelt before him and began to untie the laces of his black, patent leather shoes. Rodrigo looked down at her with a crooked smirk that promised nothing good. "You know, Paloma," he said, playing with her hair, "today I saw your sister Esperanza downtown. She was with some guy, very handsome by the way." Paloma continued untying the laces without saying a word. "Don't you want to ask who it was?" Rodrigo insisted. "If you want to tell me, I'm listening," she replied in a neutral tone. "It was Roberto Santillan. Do you know that name?" Rodrigo chuckled maliciously. "That lawyer who's always in the news defending women who say their husbands beat them?" Paloma froze. She knew that name. Roberto Santillan was well known in Guadalajara, winning domestic violence cases, often appearing on television, speaking about women's rights. "They're funny," Rodrigo continued, sipping the beer she had given him. "These hysterics run to lawyers to cry that their husbands are giving them what they deserve, as if they didn't deserve it themselves." Paloma finished with the shoes and stood up to put them in the closet. "And what do you think, Paloma?" he asked. "Is it normal for a woman, instead of taking care of her family, to whisper with lawyers?" It was a trap. Paloma knew. Any answer would be wrong. "I think everyone decides for themselves," she whispered. "Yes," Rodrigo jumped up. "Like your sister, who's sticking her nose in my business." "Rodrigo, please, I don't know anything about this." "Of course you do," he shouted, swaying. "You conspired behind my back, you think." Paloma retreated to the kitchen, but he followed her. "Rodrigo, I swear I haven't discussed anything with anyone. Please, let's go eat dinner. I made meat in its juice." "I don't want your dinner," he roared, throwing a clay pot against the wall. It shattered, and the meat scattered all over the kitchen. Paloma instinctively bent down to start cleaning, but Rodrigo grabbed her hair and sharply pulled her up. "Do you think I'm a fool, Paloma?" he yelled in her face. "Do you think I don't notice you talking about me to your family?" "No, Rodrigo, I swear to God I didn't. Don't swear in vain." He slapped her and she hit the refrigerator. "Tell the truth. Did you tell Esperanza I hit you?" Paloma remained silent, her cheek burning. In that silence, Rodrigo found his answer. "So you did," he whispered with frightening calmness. "My own wife, the woman who lives off my money in my house, bears my last name and goes around town portraying me as a tyrant. Rodrigo, I never—" "Shut up," he screamed, punching her in the stomach. She doubled over. "Since you like being a victim so much, I'll give you reasons to truly become one." What happened next was different from all previous times. He didn't just hit her, torture her, drag her around the house, throw her against walls, pull her hair out in clumps, break 2 of her ribs, dislocate her left shoulder, and cut her forehead, from which blood flowed incessantly. But the worst part wasn't the blows. The worst part was that, tired of beating her, he decided to humiliate her in the most terrible way he could imagine. "Now you're going to call your sister," he said, throwing her phone at her while she lay on the living room floor. You're going to call her and tell her that everything is wonderful, that your husband treats you like a queen, and that she should never interfere in our business again." Paloma trembled so violently that she could barely hold the phone. "Rodrigo, please." "Dial," he roared. "Dial, or I swear I'll kill you tonight." With trembling hands, Paloma dialed her sister's number. Esperanza answered on the second ring. "Paloma, are you okay? It's 11 at night." "Espy," Paloma whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm calling to apologize to you." "Apologize? For what?" Esperanza asked. Rodrigo stood nearby, listening to every word. "For making you think bad things about Rodrigo. He's a good man, Esperanza, a wonderful husband. I just get too dramatic sometimes." A long silence followed on the other end of the line. "Paloma, are you really okay? Your voice sounds strange." "Everything's fine," she lied, as blood from her forehead dripped onto the phone. "Rodrigo takes very good care of me. I don't want you to think badly of him anymore." "Okay, Paloma, okay," Esperanza insisted. "Are you sure?" Yes, everything's fine. Thank you. I love you." Paloma hung up and returned the phone to Rodrigo. He smiled contentedly. "Very good," he said. "Now go clean up all this blood you've splattered here. Tomorrow morning you're going to work as if nothing happened." Rodrigo went to sleep as if it were the most ordinary night. Paloma stayed awake until 5 a.m., wiping her own blood from the floor, bandaging her wounds as best she could, and feeling more dead than alive. But as she cleaned, something hardened inside her forever. It was no longer fear, it was no longer pain, it was something far more dangerous, the absolute certainty that all of this had to end. And when Paloma Herrera made a decision, no one in the world could stop her. Monday, October 14th, in Guadalajara began with a gray morning. Clouds full of rain covered the city like a heavy blanket, foretelling a storm. Paloma got up at 5:30 a.m., as she did every day. But this time, every movement took superhuman effort. Her broken ribs stung with every breath. She held her dislocated shoulder still, bandaged with an old sheet, and covered the wound on her forehead with Revlon cinnamon-colored foundation, bought from the corner Sari Sari store, the same one she had used for years to hide her bruises. Rodrigo snored in the marital bed as if he had had the most pleasant night of his life. His hands, the very ones that had destroyed her 12 hours ago, rested on his chest in complete silence. Paloma watched him sleep, and for the first time in 8 years of marriage, she felt no fear. She felt disgust. She walked to the kitchen, dragging her feet and trying not to make noise on the cold tiles. The broken clay pot still lay on the floor, along with the dried remnants of the stewed meat, which had turned into a brown stain on the white tile. Paloma began to meticulously clean everything, like a robot programmed to erase the traces of its own destruction. At 6:15, she brewed coffee in the blue enamel pot she had inherited from her grandmother Concepcion. The aroma of cinnamon and piloncillo filled the kitchen, mixing with the smell of bleach she used to clean the blood. Rodrigo appeared in the kitchen at 6:30, already dressed in his shift supervisor uniform, dark blue jeans, a white long-sleeve shirt, and black work boots. "Good morning, my love," he said, kissing her cheek as if he were the most affectionate husband in the world. "Good morning," Paloma mumbled, pouring him coffee into his favorite mug, white with the Chivas de Guadalajara logo. "Is lunch ready?" Rodrigo asked, checking his Samsung while eating the ham and egg scramble she had prepared. "Yes, it's already in your backpack. Meat sandwiches, sliced fruit, and hibiscus water." "Perfect," Rodrigo said, and drank his coffee in one gulp. "I'll be late today. I'm going to drink beer with the night shift guys. It's Friday, payday. You understand." It was actually Monday, not Friday, but Paloma no longer corrected Rodrigo's lies. She had realized that the truth always cost more than silence. "Okay, my love, I'll wait for you with dinner," she said. Rodrigo took his blue thermal backpack and headed for the door, but before leaving, he turned back and hugged her waist. Paloma tensed as he pressed against the exact spot where her ribs were broken. "I love you, Paloma," he whispered in her ear. "You're the best wife in the world. I'm sorry if I sometimes lose my temper. It's just that I love you so much that I go crazy at the thought of losing you." Paloma nodded, holding back tears. "I love you too, Rodrigo. Really, truly." He smiled contentedly and kissed her lips, tasting of coffee and lies. "See you tonight, my sunshine." Paloma waited until she heard the sound of the 2005 Subaru's engine fading down Morelos Street. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to cry, but not from pain or fear. She cried from rage. She walked to the bathroom and looked in the cracked mirror. Her reflection returned the image of a 32-year-old woman who looked 50, dull brown hair, yellowish skin, deep-set eyes surrounded by dark circles that no makeup could fully hide. "Who are you?" she asked her reflection loudly. Her reflection remained silent. "Who were you before him? Silence! What did you want to be when you grew up?" Suddenly, like a lightning bolt piercing the gray sky of Guadalajara, Paloma remembered. She had wanted to be a teacher. She had studied for 2 years in the elementary education program at the National Pedagogical University, Guadalajara campus. She dropped out when she met Rodrigo because he said that married women didn't need to work, that he would provide for her like a queen. "Professor Paloma Herrera," she mumbled, looking at her reflection. "That's what you were going to do." She stood in front of the mirror for 20 minutes, remembering the woman she was before she became a punching bag with a name. She remembered how she laughed, how she expressed her opinion without asking permission, how she dreamed of her own school in some rural settlement in Jalisco. That woman had died slowly, blow by blow, humiliation by humiliation, but maybe, just maybe, something of her still remained. Paloma left the bathroom and went to the guest room closet where she kept a Nike shoebox full of old photographs. Among them, she found what she was looking for, her IUPN student ID, on which she was pictured smiling at 18, with long, shiny hair, with eyes full of hope. "Hello, Paloma," she said to the photo. "You're still there, inside." She tucked the student ID into her bra near her heart and began to plan something she had never dared to think about: a life without Rodrigo Mendoza. That evening, while making tortilla soup for dinner, Paloma did something she hadn't done in 8 years. She wrote a list, but not a list of chores or groceries for the supermarket. It was a list of everything she needed to disappear. She wrote it on a paper napkin, which she then burned on the stove, but the words remained in her mind like a red-hot iron. Money, documents, clothes, phone, plan, courage. Rodrigo came home at 11 p.m., drunk and in a bad mood because his favorite team, Atlas, had lost 3-0 to America. That night, he beat her because the soup was too salty, because it wasn't salty enough, because she breathed too loudly while he watched the news, and because she existed at all. But while he kicked her on the living room floor, Paloma was no longer there. In her mind, she was already free, and that was the most dangerous thing that could happen to a man like Rodrigo Mendoza, to face a woman who was no longer afraid to die, because such a woman is capable of anything. Wednesday, November 2nd, Day of the Dead in Mexico. But for Paloma Herrera, it was the day she decided to be reborn. For 3 weeks, she had planned every step with surgical precision. While Rodrigo thought he had completely subjugated his wife, she was preparing her escape like a prisoner who had been digging a tunnel to freedom for years. She started by saving coins. Every peso Rodrigo gave her for groceries, she put aside 50 cents. She hid them in an empty Nescafe jar she buried in a pot with red geraniums in the garden. In 3 weeks, she had saved 430 pesos. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She also began to lose important documents. Her birth certificate disappeared from the drawer where Rodrigo kept all important papers under lock and key. Her voter ID was now hidden in the fold of an old curtain. She extracted her high school diploma from the family folder gradually, sheet by sheet, when he wasn't around. But most importantly, she studied Rodrigo's schedule like a private detective. Rodrigo left the house at 7 a.m. and returned at 5:30 p.m. When he didn't go out drinking beer, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, he had a meeting with his boss until 6 p.m. On Fridays, he always returned drunk after 10 p.m. On Saturdays, he played soccer with friends at the Santa Margarita neighborhood field from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Paloma chose Saturday, November 5th to disappear. In the morning, Rodrigo woke up in a good mood because his soccer team, the Lions of San Rafael, was playing in the semi-finals of the Municipal League tournament. He showered, singing Vicente Fernandez songs, had breakfast with red chilaquiles, with cream and fresh cheese, and even kissed Paloma on the forehead before leaving. "Today we win, my love," he said, carrying his Adidas sports bag. "And tonight we'll celebrate big. Make me carnitas and buy some red TKT beers." "Yes, my dear," Paloma replied, seeing him to the door. "Good luck. Play well." Rodrigo drove off in his blue tsuru, greeting neighbors who were sweeping their sidewalks. Doña Carmen shouted to him from the window. "Go, Rodrigo, let those lions win!" He responded with a cheerful honk and a smile, showing all his teeth. Paloma waited exactly 15 minutes to make sure he wouldn't return for something he might have forgotten. Then she went to the garden and retrieved the Nescafe jar with her savings. Then she went to the guest room and took out the pink school backpack she had used in high school, hidden behind old boxes. In the backpack, she put everything she could: underwear, 2 pairs of jeans, 3 blouses, a gray wool sweater, her most comfortable white sneakers, her documents, a photo of her deceased parents, her IUPN student ID, a bottle of water, and a ham sandwich wrapped in foil. But the most important thing she put in that backpack was a letter she had written and rewritten 20 times in the last 3 weeks until the words were perfect. She wrote it on a sheet from a notebook, torn from the one Rodrigo used to record household expenses. The letter read, "Rodrigo, thank you for showing me what I don't want to be. Thank you for proving that hell exists, and it has your face. Thank you for showing me that there are things worse than death. Don't look for me, you won't find me. And if you ever do, I won't be the woman you left half dead on the floor of this house so many times." Paloma left the letter on Rodrigo's pillow, on the side of the bed where he slept every night after beating her. Before leaving, Paloma did something she hadn't planned. She went to the cracked mirror in the bathroom and cut her hair. All of it. She let the brown strands fall onto the white sink like dead feathers. When she finished, her reflection showed her a completely different woman, a woman who looked like a soldier preparing for war. At 9:30 a.m., Paloma Herrera left house number 412 on Morelos Street with a pink backpack on her back and 430 pesos in her pocket. She never looked back. She walked 15 blocks to the new Guadalajara bus terminal and bought a ticket for the first departing bus, no matter where it was going. It was an ETN bus heading to Mexico City, departing at 10:45 a.m. During the entire 7-hour journey, Paloma did not close her eyes for a minute. She watched out the window as Jalisco turned into Michoacán, Michoacán into the state of Mexico, and those into the federal district. Every kilometer separating her from Guadalajara was a kilometer closer to freedom. Meanwhile, on the soccer field in the Santa Margarita neighborhood, Rodrigo Mendoza scored a goal in the 73rd minute of the match. His teammates lifted him onto their shoulders while he shouted with joy, unaware that at that very moment, his life as he knew it was ending forever. The Lions of San Rafael won 3-2, but Rodrigo Mendoza had just lost the only thing he truly controlled in his life, his victim. And when a predator loses its prey, it becomes either the most dangerous beast in the world or the most helpless. Rodrigo returned home at 8:30 p.m., Saturday, November 5th, with a wide smile on his face and a bottle of Don Julio tequila in his hand. The Lions had won, and he was the star of the match. His teammates carried him like a hero. Wives and friends congratulated him with kisses on the cheek, and even the coach said he had a future in amateur soccer. "Paloma!" he shouted from the doorway, throwing his dirty sneakers on the living room floor. "Come congratulate the champion." Silence. "Paloma!" he shouted again, heading to the kitchen. "I hope you have the carnitas ready." The kitchen was empty. There were no carnitas, no beer in the fridge, not even hot tortillas waiting for him. Rodrigo frowned. In 8 years of marriage, Paloma had never disobeyed a direct order, not once. "Paloma!" he yelled, going up the stairs to the bedroom. "Are you upstairs?" Opening the bedroom door, the first thing he saw was the letter on the pillow. A notebook page, folded in half, with his name written in his wife's trembling handwriting. Rodrigo read it once, then a second time, and then a third, because his brain refused to comprehend what he was reading. "Thank you for showing me what I don't want to be." The words pierced his chest like poisoned daggers. "Paloma!" he roared, running around the house like a madman. "Paloma, come out wherever you are!" He checked every closet, every bathroom, under the beds, behind the curtains, nothing. He went to the garage. The car was there. He ran to the garden to search among the plants. Nothing. And then he noticed something that made him go cold. On the nightstand, next to his side of the bed, lay a single red geranium, the very one Paloma grew in the garden. And beneath it, a letter. Rodrigo snatched it with trembling hands. It wasn't the letter he had found on the pillow. It was another, written on the back of his insurance policy, which he thought was safely hidden in the safe. He began to read, and each line burned him like acid. "Rodrigo, you thought I ran away. You thought I just disappeared, like the cowardly rabbit you thought I was. But you are wrong. I never ran from you. I ran to myself. And while you were celebrating your football victories, I had long been preparing for mine. You thought you controlled everything, but you didn't even notice how I collected every crumb of your lies, every insult, every bruise. They became the bricks for my new life. And here it begins. Do you remember Roberto Santillan, the lawyer you spoke of so mockingly? I met with him, not my sister, but me. I told him everything, and I have proof. Every word, every action of yours, every blow, it's all recorded, all documented. Your neighbors, who saw nothing, will soon know who you really are. Your colleagues, who admired you, will see your true face. You taught me that there are things worse than death. You are right. Living with you was worse than death. But now I am free, and I know I deserve more. I am not the Paloma you knew. That Paloma died under your fists, but in her place, Patricia Morales was born. And this Patricia fears nothing and no one, especially not you. This is not the end, Rodrigo. This is just the beginning, for me, and the end for you. Enjoy your victory today. Tomorrow will be your trial. The letter was signed, Patricia. Rodrigo felt the world around him sway. He reread the letter, his eyes darting across the lines, trying to find a single word he could refute. But there was nothing there but cold, undeniable truth. He collapsed to his knees, the letter falling from his hands. He was unable to scream, unable to breathe. He, Rodrigo Mendoza, the champion everyone respected, was caught in a trap set by the woman he considered his property. A year later, Patricia Morales sat in her office, filled with law and psychology books, overlooking a blooming inner courtyard. A warm autumn rain was falling in Guadalajara, washing the streets. Her hair was short and neatly styled, and in her eyes, now full of calm confidence, there was no trace of past pain. She was drinking hot herbal tea and listening on the phone to Esperanza's voice, who was happily talking about her new job at a kindergarten. Can you imagine, Pat? Today a boy drew me a flower and said I was the most beautiful teacher in the world. Esperanza laughed. You were right, sister. This is the best decision of my life. Thank you for helping me find it. Patricia smiled. She had indeed helped Esperanza and hundreds of other women. After she left Rodrigo, her story, told to Roberto Santillan, shook Guadalajara. Rodrigo Mendoza's trial became a national event. His respected status crumbled when all the evidence surfaced. Medical reports, testimonies from neighbors who finally dared to speak, and, most importantly, heartbreaking recordings of voice messages that Patricia had secretly kept on her old phone, where Rodrigo could be heard insulting and threatening her. Rodrigo Mendoza was sentenced to 15 years in prison for domestic violence and attempted murder. This was a precedent in Jalisco, and Patricia, now Patricia Morales, became a symbol of hope for many women. The shelter she opened in Guadalajara became a national model. Patricia's House, that's what her center was called, offered legal aid, psychological support, shelter, and training courses for women affected by violence. She worked tirelessly, often late into the night, and every time she saw a smile on the face of a woman who had just found freedom, she felt that all her suffering had not been in vain. A year later, Patricia married Roberto Santillan, the lawyer who helped her win the case. It was a modest, intimate wedding, and she chose a white dress because, finally, she felt worthy of purity. 2 years later, their son, Alejandro Santillan Herrera, was born. In the last line of his birth certificate, where the father's name was indicated, Patricia wrote a note that no civil registry official disputed. Father, Roberto Santillan Lopez. Note: this child will never know what violence is. Rodrigo Mendoza died in prison 3 years after his sentence during a fight with other inmates. Patricia learned about it from the newspaper and felt nothing, because monsters only have power over us as long as we fear them. And Patricia Morales no longer feared anything. The woman who disappeared as a victim returned as an avenger, and she won. This story is based on the real experiences of domestic violence survivors. If you or someone you know is living in an abusive situation, remember, there is always a way out. There is always hope, and there are always people willing to help. National Helpline 911